Hello, everyone. I am Henri Makembe, CEO of Do Big Things, and welcome to Do Big Talks, where we discuss the latest trends in digital advocacy and tools. On today's episode, we'll focus on fundraising. With the giving season right around the corner, we thought it would be time to start planning and talking about it. And I am joined by a very special guest, EveryAction's Executive Director, Melissa Wyers. I've known Melissa for a few years. We've talked at several conferences together. We've had an opportunity to work together on several clients, and she's one of the top fundraising practitioners in the industry. Melissa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Henry. Thank you for the kind words. I am a longtime fundraiser. I hate to admit it, but I'm going into my third decade now, and I'm a little bit different in this field in that I've done major gifts, I've done events, I've done direct mail, I've done digital. So I kind of have that breadth. And I am a very fortunate fundraiser in that now that I'm at EveryAction, I get to work with a great team of engineers who builds all the things that I wanted to have when I was a frontline fundraiser, which is such a satisfying job.
And that is why we have you here today, so you can help us explore all of those topics. But let's get started, and let's start with the elephant in the room. Over the past 15 months, both between COVID and the social justice movements that have happened, we've seen fundraising for nonprofits impacted. How do you think those two events have impacted fundraising for nonprofits?
Yeah, I think it really varies a lot in terms of who you are. You know, for a lot of our clients, particularly our clients that food banks, social services, those folks, last spring, they all of a sudden saw tremendous growth, both in terms of new donors and recapturing lapsed donors and existing donors giving more. And then as we got to the summer, we saw a really similar thing with our social justice groups for completely different reasons, but a similar growth phenomena. Then kind of the other side of it, we saw some groups that really had a tough time with their fundraising. Higher ed was one of those areas. To some extent, the arts groups, we saw some of this with. So I think it depends a little bit where you are. But the one commonality that we really saw was groups who have good individual giving programs, both low dollar and major donors. Those were the ones that really accelerated last year. You know, folks that do a lot of corporate giving, events were a mess last year. Zoom events, for the most part, are not the same as live fundraising events, and they really struggled. So I think it's kind of where you were in that space. You know, a lot of folks had record years last year and are continuing to see a lot of good growth, if not, you know, continuing where they were. And then some folks are really trying to come back and get to where they need to be.
Very interesting. I did not picture that all of those sectors would have been seeing such growth. So that's very exciting with the fall coming. But one thing you touched on is events. We've seen a lot of folks that had to transition from in-person events to virtual events to Zoom events. With things changing because of the vaccine, what are some of the things that folks that did that, nonprofit that did Zoom events and transition a lot of their fundraising online, what are some of the key takeaways that they should continue into this fall?
Yeah, I think you know, I've seen a lot of really great things to come together with Zoom events. And I think, you know, folks that donors are geographically diverse, what I really think of as cultivation events, you know, informational ways that you can connect there. I think those make sense, and that should stay in everybody's repertoire as we go to this post-COVID, hopefully post-COVID era. But I think for most fundraising events, to raise the kind of money that people want to raise, you need to get back to live events. But what we did see, and we had some clients that just did this so elegantly, a real shift into expanding those direct response programs. So digital was a big piece of that, you know, whether that was email or more social, more directed ads, and some of those pieces of it. But we also saw some of the old stalwart offline direct response techniques. Lots of people grew direct mail last year, which some people thought couldn't happen anymore. It can happen, you know. There was an uptick in telemarketing. Folks that got into DRTV are seeing great results there. And so I think the real issue for anybody, no matter what channel you're in, it's that connection with your supporters, that real direct connection, which is what we've always had with events, you know, and so much of fundraising. I mean, you can tell people all sorts of great facts and numbers and everything, but it's really when you give them a feeling that gets them to take out their credit card. And so I think that by any channel is what you want to try to do.
I agree. I think what we've seen is those direct to donate with authentic stories is what drives engagement and then drive donation. So it'd be very interesting to see how organization that finally got to that last year would be able to stay with that continuing and moving forward and have the right mix, right? So that they have the growth in those specific sector in addition to the traditional offline fundraising efforts that they've been doing. So what organization have you think have done this very successful that you'd want to call out or give a shout out to here?
There's one that I really like, which is the Vermont PIRG people. You may or may not be familiar with them, but their big thing is canvassing. For a long, long time, particularly kind of in the summers, they do door-to-door canvassing. And obviously, they have a super smart development director up there, Zach, who early on in March said, this is not going to happen this year. And so they really looked for how they could retool everything to other channels. And so they did that, and they did mail, they did phone, they did email, you know, they did ads, they did the whole piece of it. But what I thought was so smart about it is they took the way they communicate face to face and that incredible level of personalization, and they brought that to these direct response techniques. And they did fantastic. They did as well as they did in any other year. They brought in a bunch of new people to do these programs. They retrained people. I mean, I really do feel like it was a heroic effort, but it was super smart. And I think, you know, some other people, they totally transitioned almost 100%, but other folks did this, you know, to varying degrees. And what made the difference is that targeting and personalization. You know, I think the days, and again, I don't think it matters what channel, even in email, just blasting an email to your whole list is not going to get you very much. And you've got to better understand your donors and be able to better target them and talk to your sustainers a little bit different than your mid-level people or your once a year givers or your lapsed folks. And I think people who have the tools and the willingness to do that, we saw them go up and up. I think it's probably going to be hard if you're not there yet.
Such a good point. What I love about that example is the fact that it's a state-based organization. I think oftentimes folks feel like you have to be a nationwide organization or a big organization to do fundraising online well, or doing fundraising on multiple channels well. And that, I love that example because it proves that it can be done even at the local level. So that is such a great example. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that.
They're terrific. I mean, I can't give them enough credit, that whole team in those kind of times to do that, but they had a great result. But I do think that, you know, I do feel like we a little bit, I use the example of Amazon, not because I love them, but, you know, I tell my clients, go look at the homepage on Amazon, sign in, and look at all the ways they reflect you back to you. And as nonprofits, and especially as fundraisers, we've got to be able to do at least that well with our donors, because they, you know, I buy cat food from Amazon. I need it, but, you know, there's no love there. It's a convenience. But, you know, with the missions that nonprofits have, people love what you do and they care passionately about it. And so you've got to reflect back to them that you know them at least a bit, you know, so that personalization, that targeting, we just find it makes a huge difference.
Agreed. Totally makes sense. And in a narrative arc to excite people and bring that emotion into the conversation is definitely important. So pivoting and looking forward into the fall, because we have, you know, things, Giving Tuesday coming and we have the end of the year coming, what should folks be doing to get ready for the fall, coming out of these 15 months of growth in some cases and some challenges in others? What should they be doing to get ready at this point?
And we keep telling our clients a couple of things. First of all, focus right now on those people who were first-time givers last year, those new people, most of whom came in the spring or summer. But the thing is, you want to renew them now. You don't want to wait until the fall to get them back, because they will have moved on in their lives and they will think you don't need their money anymore. And probably you do. So, really up those renewal efforts right now. Don't let them lapse. And part of doing that is not only asking them to give, but keep remaking that case for giving. Henri, to your point, you need to tell those stories. What's the difference that those contributions made? How many more people were the food bank able to serve? How many more lawyers are working on social justice issues, or whatever you're doing, and really go back directly to those donors, and not just when you're asking money. Do cultivations, send them some extra, thank you so much for giving. Here's what we were able to accomplish because you and other people were so generous. And then shift that to, in a nice way of saying, this is not all over. Again, if you're kind of coming out of some of the COVID related things, like, yes, people are getting vaccinated, but also most of the supports that public agencies were providing are coming to an end or have ended, and not everybody's back, on their feet. So whether it's, rent or food or all these other things, that's still important. And you need to be that bridge to get to the end of the year type of thing. For, the social justice, it's like I think just at the beginning of what we're doing there. But, and I think a lot of people, your donors, feel that way, but you got to articulate really carefully what the next steps are and why it's so important to have them in. And I think, remaking that case over the summer, wherever you are, and then coming back and making that case again as you get towards Giving Tuesday and year end, that's going to be really important, because for the most part, and I hope it stays this way, we won't have the crazy everyday news and Twitter releases, and so you're going to have to make that case yourself. And, I think, all of us rely on all the tactics that we use, the matches and, the give before midnight. And I think you have got to be as reliant on, here's what we're doing, this is why your money will make a difference, as you are on those tactics. I think if you do those without that, you'll struggle this fall.
That is a very good point. I really like the idea of having a update report, especially for the social justice organization, like a year-end report about like,
Yep.
This is what we've been able to do with your help. Please help us further and in continuing the cause, because you're right, we're just at the beginning for many of these organizations, and it would be, I think, critical to the movement to continue funding them at a higher rate.
Some of that is getting ideas out there. I mean, part of it is, yes, we, we fed this many people, the stats are nice, but, getting out there. One of the clients that we work with is NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and they've grown a whole new scholarship program and have got a lot of thoughts about, how to bring greater diversity and equity, through a new way of bringing people into new areas. And I think for a lot of their supporters, that's really exciting. And that's in addition to all the other things they're doing, but it's a little bit new and it's exciting. And then there's some other things, there's still ideas, we know we're going to go in this direction, but we can't tell you. I think that's okay. Don't wait until you have the perfect plan. Bring your supporters along the way, because that's what they care about. They're looking to you in a lot of cases for leadership.
Yeah, definitely giving them a peek into what you're doing, how you're thinking, what you're thinking about next, or what should be next, I think is a great way to get supporter involved in the story of the organization. So that's awesome. That is a great idea. So thinking a little bit about what's next, then you mentioned targeting and segmenting. What do you think is next for online fundraising as a whole, having been in the industry for a couple of decades now?
I do think, I think a couple of things, and related to targeting and segmenting, I think all sorts of analytics are going to be important. I think there's lots of things to track beyond, recency, frequency, and monetary value, which is what everybody's relied upon, that is interesting and predictive. I think really having a better sense sense of what to ask for when becomes super important. For so long, and you use what you have, and when you get better tools, you do better. But for so long, we all depended on our fundraising calendars. And it's June. We always do the sustainer upgrade ask in June. So let's do that, and that was the best we can do. But we work with a lot of our clients to automate and put it on a donor's calendar. And then we use predictive analytics to say, actually, Henri's not a bad target to be a sustainer upgrade, but June is not the month to ask him. We would do much better in September. So we're going to automate this. And when we hit the right time for him, then he's going to get our series asking him to upgrade. And we're just finding folks that can start doing that. And it changes a little mental change because you got to track a little different and budget a little different. But we're finding people who begin to do that do hugely well. And you still have a big bubble. For a lot of people, year end is the right time to ask for everything. And I don't think that will change. But we particularly some of the upgrading, some of the lapsed recapture, some of the kind of surfacing potential major donors happens other parts of the year. And if you've got the analytics that can help give you some insight into those people. And then I just feel like automation in a good way is going to be what a lot of fundraisers are going to rely on.
I couldn't agree more. I think automation and predictive analytics, I think, are next. And I think we've worked with some client to move to do additional fundraising outside the typical fundraising calendar or typical fundraising window, and we've seen some success, and without seeing any drop off in the traditional fundraising section.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a little bit of extra, that little bit of boost is important, especially for these organizations.
I think the other thing that just gets bigger and bigger, and we've seen this for a few years now, but it is really optimizing those sustainer programs. People come to me all the time and say, we want young donors. And, that's sort of a contradiction in terms a little bit. But, I am always interested to say the oldest of the millennials turned 40 this year. So they're not quite in their prime giving years, but they're getting closer. And I think that in combination with the comfort everybody's developed with every sort of membership being on their credit card, that is your avenue to both getting some of those younger donors because that's comfortable for them, and frankly also wedding their parents and probably grandparents in some cases, to that. The other thing we're seeing clients do, and I think there will be a bigger push this fall, is more SMS. More texting. One of the interesting multi-channel campaigns that I saw was actually one that Planned Parenthood did, where they combined texting with direct mail and saw a nice lift in their direct mail. And of course, lots of people argued that that's not the right audience. But I promise you, every grandparent in America that wants to keep in touch with their grandkids learned how to text a long time ago, and they will see your fundraising asks as well. So those are kind of a little bit new things that we're seeing more and more of.
Interesting that you bring SMS, because that was our last episode of Do Big Talks.
Oh,
so for those of you who haven't,
are on top of it.
Be sure to check that out, where we talk about SMS and how it can be used in both advocacy and fundraising. Well, Melissa, any last parting words with anybody doing fundraising this fall that you want to share that we didn't get touched on so far?
I would only say, I think it's a really exciting time. We're seeing like a kind of shift in donors demographically. It is, I don't know, maybe the best of times and the worst of times in America, but I am always optimistic that you go through the bad times to come out to a better place. And so I think really thinking about how to connect with your donors through messaging, there's no magic number, how often you should email or text or anything else. You should start with, what important thing do I have to say that this person will be really excited about? And I think when you approach your fundraising programs that way, and then you automate and segment a little bit, there's the potential for a lot of growth.
All right. Well, on that last note, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, sure. Thank you for having me. It's always so good to talk to you.
Absolutely. And for those of you, thank you also for joining us at Do Big Things and Do Big Talks. If there's any topics that you'd like us to cover, please feel free to shoot us a note, put it in the comments, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks.